Hegemony is a term that describes a unique kind of leadership. It is not merely about possessing the most power. Instead, it signifies a situation where one state is so influential that it can largely shape the rules and norms of the international system. This dominant state often leads through a combination of persuasion, attraction, and, when deemed necessary, coercion. Other nations, to varying degrees, accept this leadership, sometimes willingly and sometimes with reservations. True hegemonic power means setting the agenda for global politics and economics. It involves a widespread acceptance, or at least acquiescence, to the dominant state's vision for the world order, making its influence deeply embedded. This leadership extends beyond military might, encompassing economic strength and cultural appeal, creating a comprehensive web of influence over global affairs and interactions. United States hegemony, therefore, refers to America's paramount position in the world. This position became particularly evident after the Second World War, and solidified after the Cold War. The U.S. took on the role of the primary architect and guarantor of the international liberal order. This order was built on principles such as free trade, democratic governance, and international cooperation through institutions. American leadership was crucial in establishing organizations like the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. These institutions were designed to promote stability and prosperity, often reflecting American values and interests. The U.S. projected its power globally, aiming to maintain peace and foster an environment conducive to its economic and political ideals, thereby shaping global events. The period immediately following World War II was transformative. Europe lay in ruins, its great powers exhausted and diminished. The United States, in stark contrast, emerged with its industrial base intact and booming, and with a newfound global military presence. This created a power vacuum that the U.S. was uniquely positioned to fill. The onset of the Cold War with the Soviet Union further propelled America into a leadership role, as it spearheaded the Western Bloc against communism. The Marshall Plan, for instance, was a significant U.S. initiative to rebuild Western Europe, which not only aided recovery but also cemented American influence in the region. This era marked the beginning of a bipolar world, but America's economic and political system proved more dynamic and attractive over the long term for many nations. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 was a watershed moment. It marked the end of the Cold War and the bipolar international system. Many observers at the time described this as a unipolar moment, where the United States stood as the sole superpower without any near-peer competitor. This unparalleled position allowed Washington to exert its influence more freely across the globe. The U.S. championed globalization, the spread of democracy, and a rules-based international order, largely on its own terms. During the 1990s, American military, economic, and cultural power seemed unassailable, leading to a period of significant American interventionism and global agenda setting. This era defined U.S. hegemony in its most pronounced form, setting the stage for the complexities of the 21st century. One of the most visible pillars of U.S. hegemony is its extraordinary military capability. The United States possesses the most technologically advanced and well-funded military in the world. It maintains a global network of military bases, allowing for power projection across every continent and ocean. Alliances such as NATO and partnerships with countries in Asia and the Middle East further extend its military reach and influence. This military supremacy has enabled the U.S. to act as a global security provider, intervening in conflicts and attempting to maintain stability in key regions. The sheer scale of its defense budget and its lead in military innovation, from drone technology to cyber warfare capabilities, underpins this dominance, making direct military challenges to the U.S. exceedingly difficult for any other single nation. Economically, the United States has long been a powerhouse, shaping global commerce and finance. The U.S. dollar remains the world's primary reserve currency, meaning most international trade and financial transactions are conducted in dollars. This grants Washington significant leverage in the global economy. American corporations are leaders in numerous sectors, from technology and finance to entertainment and consumer goods, driving innovation and global trends. Furthermore, the U.S. plays a dominant role in international financial institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, which it helped create. These institutions often promote economic policies aligned with American economic philosophy, influencing development paths worldwide and reinforcing its economic leadership on a global scale. Political leadership is another crucial dimension of American hegemony. The U.S. has historically used its diplomatic clout to shape international norms, broker peace agreements, and build coalitions to address global challenges. It holds a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council, giving it veto power over crucial international decisions. Washington has often promoted democracy, human rights, and the rule of law as universal values, influencing political developments in many countries. While its approach has sometimes been criticized as inconsistent or self-serving, its ability to rally other nations and set the international agenda has been a hallmark of its political influence. This diplomatic power, backed by its economic and military strength, allows the U.S. to exert considerable sway in global governance. Finally, American cultural influence, often termed soft power, has been pervasive. Hollywood movies, popular music, television shows, and fashion trends originating in the U.S. are consumed globally. American universities attract students from all over the world, and the English language, heavily influenced by American usage, is the lingua franca of international business, science, and diplomacy. Brands like Apple, Google, McDonald's, and Coca-Cola are recognized worldwide, spreading American consumer culture. This cultural magnetism, while sometimes seen as cultural imperialism, has often fostered an attraction to American lifestyles and values, subtly reinforcing U.S. influence in ways that go beyond traditional political or military means, making its ideals seem aspirational. Despite its long-standing dominance, U.S. hegemony has faced considerable criticism. Many nations have expressed concerns about American unilateralism, particularly after the Cold War, arguing that the U.S. sometimes acts without sufficient regard for international consensus or law. Interventions in countries like Iraq and Afghanistan, while often framed in terms of promoting security or democracy, have been costly in human and financial terms, and their outcomes have been deeply controversial. Some critics also point to economic policies that they believe favor American interests at the expense of developing nations, leading to accusations of economic exploitation. This resentment can undermine the legitimacy of U.S. leadership and create openings for alternative voices on the global stage, fostering a desire for a more balanced international system. The most significant challenge to U.S. economic and, increasingly, geopolitical dominance comes from China. Over the past few decades, China has experienced extraordinary economic growth, becoming the world's second-largest economy. It is a manufacturing titan and a leader in new technologies like 5G and artificial intelligence. Beijing is using its economic might to expand its global influence through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, which involves massive infrastructure investments across Asia, Africa, and Europe. China is also modernizing its military rapidly and asserting its territorial claims more forcefully in regions like the South China Sea. This rise presents a direct challenge to the US-led order, offering an alternative model of development and governance that does not prioritize Western democratic norms. Russia too has re-emerged as a disruptive force on the international stage, seeking to reclaim its status as a major global power. While its economy is smaller than that of the US or China, Russia possesses significant military capabilities, including a vast nuclear arsenal, and has shown a willingness to use its power assertively. Moscow has intervened in conflicts in its near abroad, such as in Georgia and Ukraine, and has sought to undermine Western institutions and alliances through disinformation campaigns and cyber attacks. President Putin's government often positions itself as a counterweight to American influence, challenging U.S. policies and seeking to create divisions among Western allies. This assertive posture aims to limit American power and re-establish Russian influence in its traditional spheres. Beyond specific state challengers, U.S. hegemony faces other pressures. Internal political polarization and domestic challenges within the United States can distract from foreign policy and reduce its capacity for global leadership. The rise of other regional powers such as India, Brazil, and South Africa also suggests a diffusion of power towards a more multipolar world. Furthermore, transnational issues like climate change, pandemics, and terrorism require collective global action, where the leadership of a single hegemon may be less effective or even counterproductive if perceived as overly dominant. These complex problems necessitate cooperation and multilateral solutions, potentially diluting the singular influence the U.S. once wielded more unilaterally in previous decades. The debate over whether U.S. hegemony is in decline is ongoing and complex. Proponents of the decline thesis point to several factors. The relative share of the US in the global economy has decreased as other economies, notably China's, have grown rapidly. Costly and protracted military engagements in the Middle East have strained American resources and public support for interventionism. Some argue that the US faces imperial overstretch, where its global commitments exceed its capacity to sustain them effectively. The rise of potent rivals and the increasing assertiveness of other nations signal a shift away from the unipolar moment of the 1990s. These trends suggest that the era of unquestioned American dominance may indeed be waning, leading to a more contested global landscape. However, arguments against a straightforward decline are also compelling. The United States still possesses formidable assets. Its military remains the most powerful globally, with unparalleled technological advantages and a vast network of alliances that no other nation can match. The American economy, despite challenges, is highly innovative and dynamic, particularly in key sectors like technology and finance. U.S. universities and research institutions continue to lead the world, attracting global talent. The U.S. dollar's status as the primary reserve currency provides significant economic leverage. While the international system is changing, the U.S. retains a unique capacity to shape global events, and no single power is currently positioned to fully supplant its overarching influence across all domains. It is perhaps more accurate to say that U.S. hegemony is transforming rather than simply declining. The world is likely moving towards a more multipolar or multi-ordered system, where several major powers and regional actors exert significant influence. In such an environment, the U.S. may need to adapt its approach to leadership, relying more on diplomacy, coalition building, and shared responsibilities, rather than unilateral action. Its role might evolve from being the sole superpower to being a first among equals, or a leading power within a more distributed global power structure. This would require a strategic recalibration, focusing on areas where American leadership remains indispensable while acknowledging the legitimate interests and growing influence of others. In conclusion, U.S. hegemony has profoundly shaped the post-World War II and post-Cold War eras, providing a framework for global security and economic interdependence, albeit one with its own set of problems and criticisms. While the unipolar moment has passed and new challenges have emerged, the United States remains a central actor in global politics. Its military, economic, political, and cultural influence, though contested, is still substantial. The future will likely see a continued evolution of America's role, adapting to a more complex and competitive international environment. Whether this transformation leads to a more stable and cooperative global order, or increased instability, will depend on the choices made not only in Washington, but also in other major capitals around the world.